What's up, YouTube? I am here in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm visiting the final resting places of the ex-wife and first son of Bert Lahr, who you may know by his iconic role as the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz. Here we are at the gravesite of Herbert Lahr, who was the firstborn son of Bert Lahr, the Cowardly Lion, who portrayed the Cowardly Lion in the 1939 classic, The Wizard of Oz. Herbert here was born in 1928, passed away here in Tucson in 2002. He was 79 years old, and he was a well-known and well-respected attorney here in Tucson and in southern Arizona. He had offices in Tucson and in Sierra Vista, which is a town in southeast Arizona, not all that far from the Mexican border. As you can see here on his stone, he has the scales of justice, and he was married to a woman by the name of Janice Hedman Lahr, and she was also an attorney. As you'll see here, she has the scales of justice under her name as well. And Herbert was in private practice. He was a partner in a small law firm, again with offices in Tucson and in Sierra Vista, but Mrs. Lahr was a longtime employee of the Tucson City Prosecutor's Office. So she prosecuted misdemeanor offenses in the city of Tucson. Miss Hedman actually passed away in 2018 at the age of 94, but I'm not sure if she's interred here next to or with Herbert or not. Kind of got conflicting information on the internet. Sounds like she may have been cremated, and again, I'm just not sure. I don't know whether maybe they just haven't put a plaque up, or maybe she chose to have her ashes spread, or they're with the family, or whatever. But again, Herbert also he grew up in Phoenix. He grew up in Tucson, and he moved to Tucson as a child. Went to the University of Arizona both for his undergraduate degree and his law degree, and was very active with the university. For a long time, he was the scorekeeper for the University of Arizona basketball team. And again, here we are at the Temple Emmanuel section of Evergreen, right near the southern edge of the cemetery, near Miracle Mile Boulevard. So Mr. Herbert Lahr had an affinity for the University of Arizona, and was a scorekeeper, or helped out with the scorekeeping up until about 1997. So looks like he was around for the University of Arizona Wildcats 1996 national championship. Yeah, yippee. I'm an Arizona State University Sun Devil fan, so still waiting on our first championship. Can't wait for that. And the way the rivalry is, I'm sure Mr. Lahr wouldn't have liked that. But in any event, Mr. Lahr was seems like from all indications, a very nice man, and a well-respected attorney. I would have loved to have met him. It sounds like, from what I've read, people would come up to him after learning he was the son of Bert Lahr, and he was always happy to talk about his famous father, and had a lot of love for him. So next we will be going to see his mother's grave at the Holy Hope section, or the Holy Hope Cemetery, which is right next door to Evergreen. We're at the gravesite of Bert Lahr's first wife, Mercedes Delpino Lahr. Her nickname was Babe. And as you can see, she passed away in 1965 at, oh, my math is right here, but she was 67 years old. Bert Lahr, as you know, he's most well known for playing the Cowardly Lion on The Wizard of Oz, and but he started off his career as a burlesque comedian, and then he was on the Broadway stage. But in his early days, he and Mercedes, who was a dancer, she was born in Puerto Rico but lived in New York City, along with Bert. Bert was the son of German Jewish immigrants that settled in New York City, and he caught the entertainment bug early, and again worked in burlesque and in Broadway plays and in film. But those early days, he developed an act with Mercedes here, who was a dancer, and they had a routine where he kind of played this bumbling cop, and she was like a lady of the evening, I guess. And it was supposedly pretty funny. I couldn't find any footage on it, but I guess I don't know if any of it would exist from the early 20s, seeing as they were doing a bunch of silent films and whatnot then. But in any event, it's just kind of interesting how a lot of these kind of relatives of the rich and famous wind up here in Tucson. Bert himself died in 1967, and he's buried in a cemetery in New York. And Mercedes and Bert had a son born in 1928 by the name of Herbert Lahr, and he's buried very close by in Evergreen Cemetery. That was Temple Emmanuel section. And one thing that's kind of interesting is Mercedes here was Catholic. She's buried here in Holy Hope Cemetery, which is a Catholic cemetery. And again, she was originally from Puerto Rico, so it's not a big surprise that she's Roman Catholic. Yet Bert Lahr was Jewish, and his son appears to be, his son's Jewish too, because he's buried in the Jewish section of Evergreen, which is right across the way. And but the interesting part of, it's my understanding, I'm not Jewish myself, but interestingly enough, my son and my daughter are, partly through their mother. And from what I understand, the Jewish faith runs through the mother, supposedly, some kind of way. But whatever, it's religion, so who knows? Maybe Herbert grew up and just decided to follow whatever faith he wanted to. He could have been Catholic, he could have been Jewish, he could have been Protestant or Muslim or Hindu if he wanted to. But so he chose his own path, and that's his right, and that's everybody's right, honestly. So in any event, Mercedes unfortunately had kind of a very sad life. She and her mother passed away in like the mid-20s, and she took it really hard. She went into what we would all recognize today as depression, but you got to understand, in the 20s they didn't know what they were dealing with, and Bert wound up having to have her institutionalized, and that's how, I believe that's how she wound up here in Tucson. According to her obituary, she lived with her sister and Herbert, her son, off a country club road here in Tucson. And when she passed away, I think Herbert was in his second year of law school at the University of Arizona Law School, which is not all that far from here either. Really, a whole lot of, mostly everything's kind of seemingly close by in Tucson. It's not that big. I mean, it's a good sized city, but everything's fairly close. but I guess in this area things are fairly close. Anyway, one of the, and I remember this from law school myself, one of the ways you can get out of a marriage is by pleading insanity, by saying that your spouse is insane, and the courts will let you out of the marriage. But you have to, of course, you just can't go in and say, hey, my wife's crazy, let me out of this marriage, or heck, nobody would be married. So, and I guess that would go for husbands too. But, Herbert, even back then in the 20s, he had enough to get divorced, and eventually Mercedes here wound up here in Tucson, and again, she was institutionalized for a while, and it's just kind of very sad, I think, because I was talking to my son about it, who's graduated college a couple years ago, and he was a psychology major, and I was telling him about Mercedes, and we were talking about what he, kind of get his diagnosis of her, and he guessed it right. She was just depressed, and clinically depressed, and of course there's all types of medications and therapy and things that folks can do nowadays, which unfortunately in the 20s and 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, weren't available. But I do hope that she found peace. And her inscription here says, I don't know if you guys can see it, it says, beloved by all. And I don't doubt that a minute. She raised like I said, her and Bert had a son, Herbert, and he wound up being a successful attorney, and a credit to his community. He was, she, through all her faults or all her issues that she had, she wound up raising a son that overcame and did her proud, honestly, her and Bert proud. And after Bert divorced her, he kind of fell in love with another woman, but he still had love for Mercedes. And I guess he was kind of dragging his feet on the divorce, and this other woman married another guy while she was waiting on Bert to get his act together. And he eventually won this woman back, and he actually stayed with her. They were married. He had 2 other children, and his youngest son is still living, and he's a London-based theater critic, and he actually wrote a book about his dad, and I'll put the link up on that book if you guys are interested. It's actually, it looks like a pretty good read. But she, when Bert died 2 years, he died in 1967, 2 years after Mercedes, and it said that when he was informed that Mercedes had passed, he didn't talk for 3 days, just didn't talk. So, he still cared deeply about his first wife. And, I didn't know the man. He died when I was 4 years old, but, just from his performances and on stage and in film where I've seen him, he just seemed that kind of a genuine, kind of a nice guy and a loving person. And it doesn't surprise me that he still kind of had feelings and emotions for his first wife. So that's pretty much it here for Mercedes and Herbert Lahr. Leave some comments below, and shoot, I know there's links. I know other folks have visited Bert Lahr's grave in New York, and I don't know, maybe we can link this one up with that and kind of round out at least part of the extended family. And but if you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe, and be sure to pass the link around. And with that, I'll just do a quick panoramic view here of Holy Hope. I apologize for calling it Holy Cross, and that will end the video. So see you next time, guys.